What's up, y'all? My name is JR, and for those of you who don't already know, I'm a huge movie and TV nerd. If you're new here, I appreciate you taking the time to check out my channel. I hope you'll consider sticking around and joining the film community I'm trying to build here on YouTube. So in today's video, I'm going to be giving my initial thoughts on the Hulu original series, How to Die Alone. And just so you guys know, this video will contain spoilers, so if for some reason you haven't gotten around to watching this show yet and you don't want to know anything that happens in it, you might want to exit this video now. And with that being said, no more wasting time. Let's get into it. How to Die Alone is an American comedy series created by and starring Natasha Rothwell. The series follows a woman who has never been in love and decides to change her life after a near-death experience. Conrad Ricamora, Jocko Sims, and Keelan Darrell Jones also star. The series premiered on Hulu on September 13th of this year. Now, at the time of the making of this video, the series has an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it does not yet have a rating on the popcorn meter. It has a Metascore of 76 on Metacritic based on just 13 critic reviews, with a user score of 6.0, based on only 6 user ratings. So not a lot of ratings just yet. And finally, it has a 6.8 out of 10 on IMDb with just over 300 ratings. So look, this show is cute. And I mean just that. It's nothing really special or particularly different. And, shows like this depend heavily on the actor in the lead role. If that actor can pull off the role, then the show works well. And if not, then, well, you get my point. And, Rothwell, wants to be Issa Rae here, but she doesn't quite get there, in my opinion. And I think it's because in Insecure, Issa Rae played an over-exaggerated version of herself, and you could see that throughout the show. Here, you don't quite feel that energy, and as a result, this show doesn't quite work as well with Rothwell playing the lead character. There just isn't the same chemistry within the group that she has in this show that Issa was able to produce with the actors in the friend group on Insecure. Partly because I think Rothwell works best as a side character who can come in and be loud and rambunctious in small doses. And I think that, here you try to take some of that away, try to take the edges off the character a little bit, and it doesn't quite give you the same oomph, if you ask me. Now, the pilot episode is all about the setup, as it should be. We're introduced to Melissa, a woman who feels overlooked by people and especially attractive men. And one man in particular, and Alex, who it turns out she broke things off with before the events of the show, and who it turns out is now getting married and has invited Melissa to his destination wedding, despite the fact that she works for an airline at JFK, but is afraid to fly, which I'll admit was a nice touch. We see that she doesn't have her life together in any aspect, to the point where we're made to feel sorry for her. Melissa is an awkward yet personable woman, and so you like her despite finding out just how unstable she is. And, there's a part of the character that needs the few people in her life for things like attention from her best gay, Rory, and usually money or some other kind of help from her brother, Brian. In fact, in this episode, Mel wants Rory to hang out with her for her birthday, but he declines. Now, Melissa thinks he's blowing her off to hook up with someone, which gives us the sense that maybe Rory does this kind of thing a lot. He's a little bit of a hoe. But he lies and tells her that he and his dad has a thing. So Melissa goes and buys do-it-yourself furniture and spends the night alone in her apartment putting said furniture together. But after the cabinet that she put together falls over on top of her, she wakes up in a hospital next to an older woman named Elise, who, after talking to Melissa, explains that she used to be just like her until she decided to step out of her comfort zone and truly start living. And Melissa ultimately promises Elise that she too will start living right before Elise dies in the bed right next to her. Now, after this traumatic event, Melissa calls Rory, but he is indeed hooking up with a guy that he's seen at the airport rather frequently that they call, bi-coastal Ben. So he just simply declines Mel's call, which forces Mel to call her brother, who it turns out is on a date. And he ignores her call at first, because he's on a date. But she keeps calling and eventually he answers. And the next thing we see is Mel leaving the hospital with her brother picking her up. And it's a very slight thing that happens if you pay attention, but her brother puts a wedding ring on his finger right as Melissa gets into the car. You have to really pay attention to see it. And as he's driving Melissa home, we find out, of course, that he has a family. More specifically, a white wife and therefore mixed kids. So, on the sneak tip, we have information that Melissa does not have, that her brother is on dates with women, though he's married with children. But after they get into this argument about the state of Melissa's life, her brother saying, "I wish you would call me sometime when you didn't need something from me." But Melissa gets out of the car and she happens into a bar where she meets Allie, the bartender. And as she goes to pay for her drinks, she notices that she was given Elisa's things instead of her own before she left the hospital. And at that point, she goes on an emotional rant about wanting to feel seen, which is the overarching point of not only this episode, but the series as a whole. And this makes Allie feel sorry for her, and Allie gives Mel her number. And anyway, from there, she goes to Elisa's apartment. And I don't know if it's breaking or entering if you got the key, right? But okay. But anyway, she takes Elisa's dog after trying to use her own credit cards to pay for a trip to Alex's wedding, with her credit cards all being declined. Again, she doesn't have her life together. So this is just the writer's just using this to show us in another aspect, financially, she's all over the place as well, overextended. But then she uses one of Elisa's cards and the charge goes through. So Melissa has both decided to attend Alex's wedding, even though this is a man she used to date. And, she spent a lot of the episode kind of, going back and forth about whether or not she was going to go to the wedding. But she decides to go to the wedding. And, more importantly, by the end of the episode, she's a criminal in a lot of respects. But what else, right? Now, episode 2 focuses on Melissa building a friendship with Allie, who, at the beginning of said episode, supplies her with weed after agreeing to watch her dog so that she can go back to work, on Percocet, by the way, because, she had broken her arm due to the furniture falling over on her. We're also introduced to Melissa's work nemesis, Patty. Patty's basically the Karen of the show. Melissa and Rory are now at odds because he skipped out on her birthday to hook up with bi-coastal Ben, and she kind of blames him, not being there for her almost dying. Melissa talks to Alex about the management program at the airport, but when she talks to Rory about it, he doesn't want her to enter the program because his father is the president of the airport, and the pair of them have a fraught relationship. So Rory doesn't like the fact that that his father sees leadership qualities in her, but does not see them in him. And thereby, Rory has the attitude, well, since my dad don't want to do right by me, I don't think you should do anything for him because we're friends. It works for the show. It works fine. And while at work, Melissa runs out of perks and basically goes on an airport scavenger hunt with Rory looking to re-up. And here we meet a cast of ragtag characters in the process, and so, funny interactions to be sure, right? Not like laugh out loud funny, but just kind of like, oh, that's cute. You know what I mean? And eventually we run into Carlos, who works airport security, and he gives Melissa an expensive ham that was confiscated from an international passenger. And Alex then presents Melissa with a letter of recommendation for the management program, as Patty kind of plays the foil because, Patty wants to be a part of that management program. And so she doesn't really get along with Melissa. And so, Patty's kind of trying to put herself above Melissa so that she can, be up for the promotion instead of Melissa. Now, Melissa then goes home and she smokes the weed she got from Allie at the beginning of the episode as she reads Alex's letter. which is full of just all these nice things. And that prompts Melissa to call Alex, and they have a flirty conversation. Now, in episode 3, we find Mel in the management training program along with Carlos. And they end up sitting next to each other and decide to be partners in kind of a getting to know each other exercise that's designed to prepare them to have tough conversations. You know, the kind that you'll have to be able to have in management positions, according to the training leader. So, you know, she and Carlos, they talk. And this is where we find out how Alex and Mel broke up through flashbacks. I thought this was a smart place to put said flashbacks to give us context for the whole Alex and Mel of it all. We also find out how Mel met Rory and how she got the job at the airport. Again, a smart choice. This was just like the prime place for these scenes to be. We also see a conversation between Melissa, Allie, and Tamika, who is Melissa's neighbor, about how Rory doesn't want her to take the management course because of his relationship with his father. And, you know, they're at the bar when this takes place. And the girls basically tell her to do it anyway because, you know, who is Rory? And at that point, we go back to the class, and the leader of the training tells the group that they have now gotten to know each other and that they should be ready to have, quote unquote, tough conversations. Keep that tough conversations part at the front of your mind. So upon arriving home, Mel gets her bill from the hospital, and it turns out it's a lot. I mean, you know, because of course it is, right? You know, healthcare ain't cheap. So she tries to get on a payment plan, but she finds out that she will need a cosigner, which I kind of thought was a little weird. I mean, I don't know how this stuff works in New York, but, you know, she's already been discharged for the hospital. So I don't understand why she would need a cosigner to pay a bill that she's already been billed. So it's not like, you know, she's at the hospital and they're going, we're not going to let you go until this is paid for somehow. Like, she's already received the treatment, but, you know, all right. You know, I understood why the writers decided to go with that. It was kind of something that was needed in order to move the plot and the season along. So even though you kind of go, that's a little bit outside of what would typically happen in real life. But, you know, this is a TV show. So, you know, you give some passes where you have to. Anyway, she calls Rory and she asks him to co-sign. But when he finds out how much the bill is, he tells Mel that he's uncomfortable with co-signing, which seems to annoy Melissa. I don't know why she was upset, because I think the bill was like $30,000. I don't care who you're best friends with. I don't know very many people that are just going to up and co-sign for anything that costs that kind of money, especially when you know your life's not together. So I thought it was kind of weird. But, you know, maybe that speaks to some of Melissa's character flaws, things that she kind of needs to come to terms with and work out. So, you know, I'm okay with it. At that point, Melissa checks the remainder of Elise's credit cards and realizes that Elise died with substantial available credit. Anyway, Melissa and Rory end the episode with a face-to-face conversation because Rory is about to meet Bicoastal Ben's parents. And so he was calling Melissa, but she hung the phone up on him. So he just, I guess, shows up to her apartment. And I guess he has keys because he was sure inside her apartment when she got there. But they have a tough face-to-face conversation about the state of their relationship. A quote-unquote tough conversation. See what they did there? Now, a fight ensued wherein Melissa explains to Rory that he is never there for her when it really matters. Even though I gotta say, Melissa, she expects too much from Rory. And Rory indeed responds by explaining to Melissa how exhausting it is being her only friend. And I gotta say that though Rory, you know, at this point does kind of blow her off a bit, you know, I understand how he feels trying to be all things to her. You know, he even says to her, hey, look, I'm not your boyfriend. Like, you know, you kind of use me as a boyfriend replacement, and I have to then do everything with you because you can't go out here and keep a man, find a man, whatever. Now, episode 4 then focuses on Melissa putting herself back out there in the dating scene because apparently she took what Rory said to heart. She goes out for drinks with Tamika, her neighbor, and her new friend, bartender Allie, you know, who's also her pusher, apparently. Melissa then goes home and tries to pleasure herself while thinking about Carlos, but Alex keeps popping into her head because, I mean, Alex is really bae, right? I mean, I'm interested to see, you know, how the season progresses as it pertains to Alex and Melissa's relationship. I am of the mind at this point that Alex ain't getting married. I just don't see it happening, right? And I think that's the whole point. You know what I'm saying? So back in class, the training leader is talking to, the trainees about relationships between coworkers. And of course, we find out that basically everybody that works at the airport is dating or hooking up with someone else that works at the airport, or they have in the past. And so, I mean, that's that on that, as the kids say, right? Now, Mel ends up switching responsibilities with Patty, so she can go have lunch with Mike from Lost and Found. Again, co-worker relationship, right? But that puts her directly in Alex's purview just as his fiance arrives at the airport, prepared to go on a trip. I believe it's for her bachelorette, because there's other people that are going with her. But the airport gets shut down due to a child going missing. So Mel and Alex's fiance go to get copies of a scavenger hunt list so that I guess the women can do this scavenger hunt while they're stuck at the airport. And Alex's fiance just can't stop talking. I mean, to the point of making Mel extremely comfortable, which was kind of like, yeah, that is kind of weird. Why would you send your ex off with your fiance that you're about to marry? Like that, I'm Alex, my man. You welcome to slipping ass brothers for sure. But during their conversation, Mel finds out that Alex has plans to move to Atlanta after he's married. This info sends Mel straight at Carlos full force. I understand it. Again, I don't understand why Melissa's upset that a dude that she rejected now has another woman and who's now moving on with his life when she was the one that didn't want to be with him. But, she meets Carlos in their spot, the confiscation room, and they eat more confiscated food. Like Melissa, basically, she already, she already took a confiscated ham last episode. They're eating more confiscated food. And somehow that turns into Carlos going down on her and having sex with her. And, with this being a comedy, it's over really, really quick. I think the sex was designed to disappoint her. And it does. And then right after that, she finds out that Carlos is married. So boom, right on time, right? Which seems to infuriate her. And I'm on her side on that one. I mean, Carlos has been flirting with her for a couple of episodes now. Dude, if you were married, you could have just said that. But after leaving Carlos, Mel happens upon the missing girl who's hiding in a golf cart off in a corner somewhere. And it turns out the young lady is being put on a plane to North Carolina to go and see her dad, and she doesn't want to go. That's why she went missing. She just basically wandered off. And she's hiding. Mel gets her to go with her, and she takes the girl to her mom. And the mom is there with Alex as Mel arrives with the daughter. And then she gives, Alex shit about moving to Atlanta. I don't know why, but okay. Then she talks about the work sex with Carlos with Allie and Tamika. And they basically get their jokes off, and then they have her set up a dating profile. But once the profile is set up, she starts scrolling and she finds her brother on the app. So this is the point in the season where she finds out what we already know, that her brother is out here playing the field and he's married with kids. So it'll be interesting to see where the next episode goes as it pertains directly to the brother and his situation. Because I'm assuming that, episode 5 is going to be a lot about Melissa's family drama as it pertains to the brother, the wife, and maybe even the kids. So look, despite people involved with this show trying to convince you that it's different somehow, you should know that it's not. I saw a lot of Weeds or Californication, a little bit of Entourage, in that it mixes comedy and drama in almost the exact same ways that the other shows did. In fact, it really tries at times to be blind spotting, with background performers breaking into dance choreography out of nowhere. In episode 3, there was a lot of dancing going around, kind of, to symbolize, Mel's state of mind on these Percocets, until they finally wore off. And I'm going to also say it tries really hard to recreate the formula that made Insecure so successful, featuring an insecure black female lead, just like the show that made Rothwell a known commodity. I also want to take a moment to state that I thought the man on the street interviews at the beginning of each episode was a little overkill. I don't think it was needed. But I want to be fair here. I don't think Rothwell is necessarily bad in this show. I don't think she's a bad actor. Even in, dramatic content, I don't think she's a bad actor. But this show is not as funny as it thinks it is, and it's certainly not as different. Now, so far, I'd give the show a 55% or 5.5. You're thinking IMDb score. And I know that's lower than all the scores on all the aggregate sites, but I'd be willing to maybe up my score just a tad depending on how the season progresses and depending on how the season ends. I say all that to say I think right now the show is mid. I also think that what saves this show from being less than that is the fact that the episodes are only 30 minutes long, so it doesn't really get a chance to just kind of get boring and stale. I also think that Hulu knows that the show is mid, and that's why they released half the season up front. I thought that was interesting. And next week, we'll get 2 more episodes before getting the last 2 a week after that. So essentially, Hulu is going to release a whole last 8-episode season of a television show in just 3 weeks. They clearly want to get in and get out here, and I don't think that they would be in such a rush if they really thought they had a hit on their hands. I'll say again, I think that Rothwell is a great comedic talent, but her shtick works best, in my opinion, as a sidekick, no shade. Watching her as a lead is really, really awkward. Now, that being said, the writing mostly does what it needs to in this kind of show, with dialogue that feels authentic, but at times it felt like the writers were trying way too hard to get jokes off instead of letting them come more naturally through the stories and through the characters' actions, which I think makes the show less funny. Once you as an audience member can see, oh, this is where the jokes are supposed to just pop off, one after another, one after another, one after another, right? You kind of just go, yeah, okay. I also found the plot to be rather predictable, and I thought some of the characters were a bit too cliche. For example, the writers seemed to be trying way too hard with both Rory and Kaya, with Rory being super flamboyant and Kaya being extra hood with hot sauce on the side. And I just felt like those characters could have been toned down a bit, not because I have an issue with gay people or hood people, but I just dislike when the show tries to make characters into cartoons, trying to use them for cheap laughs instead of letting them be authentic people and earn the laughter the hard way, through the writing, right? I don't like it when they turn a scene into, 2 minutes of stand-up. But at least the writers had the guts to criticize Rory in a very real way, both as a person and as a friend in the 3rd episode, so I guess that's something. Characters belonging to marginalized groups usually can't be written as deeply flawed or problematic in these types of situations or shows, so kudos to the writers for that at least. But all things considered, if what I've seen so far is any indication, I think this show is going to be a 1-season experiment that fails to inspire a second go-round. But what do you guys think? Have you seen How to Die Alone yet? If you have, did you like it? Or did you find it to be just another 30-minute dramedy? Let me know in the comments. And for those of you that might be new to the channel, be sure to like and share this video. If you like the content, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I drop a new video. Also, if you want to support the channel, feel free to leave a super thanks in the comments section. I'd greatly appreciate it. Also, be sure to go check out themanscreenwriter.com for more television and film reviews and info on my upcoming film projects. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I got screenplays to write. I'll catch y'all on the next video.